Thanks for staying with us. Now, Parliament's Finance Committee has hinted it may expand its probe into the banking collapse and hold a public hearing on the issue. Chairman of the committee, Dr. Marcus Ibeyeboah, says the 3-day closed-door probe, which began on Wednesday, is just an initial enquiry. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo has more.
Parliament Finance Committee, chaired by Dr. Marcus Ibeyeboah, on Wednesday began its probe into the collapse of some banks in the country. Officials from the Bank of Ghana as well as the Ministry of Finance appeared before the committee. But even before the hearings began, well, MP for Bolgatanga Central and NDC MP Isaac Adongo stormed out of the committee hearing. He protested they've not been given adequate documents to interrogate, and he described the sitting as something that will not be useful and that it's an attempted cover-up of what led to the banking collapse.
You can't give me an executive summary of Boulder's report and the rest are your press conferences. I can't be part of this. Wow. I can't be part of this. And
the full KPMG report is not even part.
This is what I have. These are the documents we are considering.
When it's already in the public domain.
Why should I sit in that meeting and rubber stamp it? I won't do it. Listen, this is a rubber stamp process. It will deliver no value. I am not willing to be part of it. These are the documents they gave to us. Statement of banking sector, press release by Bank of Ghana, press release, governance speech. When it comes to KPMG, they only give you conditions and opinions of Unibank. There were 5 asset quality reviews at Unibank. There were 4 of them in 1 month. We don't even have that report. They claim that there was a preliminary work that was done by KPMG to take a decision to go into it. We don't have that report. We don't even know the terms of reference of the job that KPMG did. We don't even know what contract we signed with Boulders. We don't even know the full report of Boulders except executive summary of Boulders' work. Why will I sit in that meeting? I won't sit in that meeting.
Isaac Adongo had a response from Majority Leader Saichi Mensah Bonsu. He says his decision to boycott the sitting is obviously not the best.
We have a bit until just a few moments ago. I think certainly not the best. If he has any legitimate claim, he should keep prompting the chairman, and if it's relevant to the transaction of business by the committee, I believe that it could be procured for the purposes of getting to the truth of this matter. We are all concerned, and we need to deal with it. I think it's important to also explain that Parliament operates by our own rules of procedure. What is happening here now, which I agree to, I've always taken a principled position that committees should be liberated to act proactively. Our orders provide that matters should be referred to committees before they act on them. And all speakers have held to that. We want to refer matters to them.
Some NDC MPs have also been reacting to Adongo's decision to boycott and his complaint about the document not being adequate. Host Central MP Benjamin Kpodo, who is a colleague on the NDC side, says they have received enough of the document and he doesn't agree that the entire sitting will not be useful at all.
It is within the right of every member of the committee to demand additional information in course of our work. So his demand is legitimate that we should have also, in addition to what has been given to us, the details of the AQR exercise carried out, as well as other reports, the details, we can demand them. So he just needed to table it. And that was what he did, and it's acceptable.
On the appearance of the governor of the central bank, Dr. Ernest Addison, well, a member of the finance committee on the NDC side, John Jinapo, described the appearance as very disappointing. He says the governor was evasive with the kinds of responses he gave when he appeared before the committee, particularly when it came to the issue of job loss and how come officials of the BOG have not been penalized several months after they supervised the collapse of the banks.
One response is job security. I need clear-cut response. That look, we shall keep employees for 3 months, we shall keep them for 2 months, so that employees are certain and clear in their mind that beyond 3 months, I might be losing my job. But if you say immediately and leave it blank, if we ask you, look, why did you not apply these laws when you realized that the banks were not doing well? Why didn't you revoke the license? And you can't give clear answers. If I ask you as governor, why did you grant license in May 2017 to 2 banks only for them to fail? And you say that your answer is that you were there for only 6 weeks. 6 weeks, you couldn't determine that, look, this bank were not fulfilling the obligations. Ultimate responsibility rests with the governor.
Well, Dr. Ernest Addison himself was unwilling to comment on this, except this quick response that he had to our question, indicating that, well, for him, his appearance before the committee went quite well. How did it go for you?
Very well. It was a pleasure sharing the information. Yeah.
Chairman of the Finance Committee, Dr. Makasi Beyeboah, in a brief address to the press, gave the hint that this could just be a beginning of the processes and that it's possible that in future a more open public inquiry will be held on what exactly led to the collapse of the banks after they've established exactly what happened in the next 3 days of the sittings that they would have.
After this 3-day exercise, we'll piece all the information together and then decide on the next steps, whom to invite going forward and what we'll do. If at that stage you want to do a full-blown public inquiry, we'll do so. But now we are dealing with the institutions.
So the probe is continuing on Thursday and Friday, when it's expected that officials of the Consolidated Bank, officials of KPMG, officials of PricewaterhouseCoopers, as well as the Securities and Exchange Commission and the National Insurance Commission would all be appearing before the committee, again during closed-door sittings. From Parliament House in Accra, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo reporting.
And Joseph Opoku-Gakpo joins me with more on this in the studio. Hello, Joseph. So we do understand officials of the Finance Ministry also appeared before the committee. What do we know from, what they came to say at the committee?
So that team was led by Charles Boahene, one of the deputy finance ministers. Right. The committee had questions about where the money that went into the establishment of the new bank, something in the region of 8 billion or so, came from. They needed answers from that because they'd been concerned that Parliament hadn't approved any such thing. Right. The finance ministry officials defended that and insisted that after analyzing the situation, they felt this was the right course of action in order to save jobs, in order to save the banking industry, and in order to ensure that confidence in the financial system continues to grow. And then they justify that one of the sure ways around raising the money is through the bond issues that we'll be seeing. Okay. And earlier we saw one of the committee members, Isaac Adungo, storming out of the committee's meeting. Do the other members of the minority, do they also stand with him on this particular position? No, they don't. Both the majority and the minority side. Earlier they had indicated that after each of the sessions there would be joint media briefings. Right. At the joint media briefing, both the majority and the minority side officially disassociated themselves, particularly the minority side, they disassociated themselves from Mr. Dongo's boycott and indicated that that is a personal position that he had assumed, and made reference again to some comments he had made earlier that they would return the banks to the original owners going into the future. Again, the minority says this is Mr. Dongo's personal position. They are not in support of it. Fifi Kwete, who is the leader of the minority side on the committee, because the ranking member is out of town, and the chairman of the committee, Makasi Beyeboah, addressed the press, and they've been reacting to Mr. Dongo's concerns. Okay, you can listen.
I think the Finance Committee is composed of 25 members, and by our attendance list, we had 20 members present today. Now, is he suggesting that the 19 other members also didn't have sufficient documents that they could peruse? Are all the 19 members in an exercise of a cover-up? Is that what he's suggesting?
The views he expressed earlier regarding returning access to owners of the bank is his individual position as well. Represents none of us on the Finance Committee, and I can say by extension doesn't represent the minority in Parliament as well.
And staying with banking issues, the receiver of defunct Unibank, Ni Amani Ghana, is accusing founder Dr. Kwabena Dufour and other directors of unlawfully contracting loans and breaching regulations. It will be recalled that the Bank of Ghana last month revoked the license of Unibank and 4 other banks, citing breach of banking regulations and insolvent nature as the basis. The receiver, in his writ, wants repayment of an amount of 5 billion cedis. There's more in the following report.
Other individuals named in the writ include former CEO Dr. Kwabena Dufour II, former board chairman Opoku Jemfi Boateng, former non-executive director Professor Newman Kojokusi, former executive director Owusu Ansa Are, among others. Some companies have also been named as defendants in the suit. They include Star Life Assurance, Urban Logistics, Bolton Portfolio Limited, Holder Holdings and Properties Limited. Mr. Dodu in his writ is seeking a declaration that some of the defendants have engaged in unlawful transaction and should be held liable for the repayment of an amount of 5,712,623,145 cedis. He wants all assets acquired with funds unlawfully obtained from the bank to be returned to the bank. Even before the case is determined, Mr. Dodu wants the registrar of the courts to inspect all of the assets with the assistance of the Inspector General of Police.
You're still watching Joy News Prime with me, Araba Kumsi. We're taking a short break. Don't go away. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. Now, the Union of Industry, Commerce and Finance Workers, UNICOF, has predicted that 1,700 workers are likely to lose their jobs following the consolidation of the 5 failed banks by September. There are concerns about delays in paying severance for workers who lost their jobs. Workers of Capital and UT Bank who lost their jobs last year have not received their severance pay. Labour Policy International is unhappy that workers' rights have been trampled upon. Joining us now to discuss job issues job losses rather in the banking sector, which has the potential of spiraling unemployment rates out of control, is Seth Abloso, Acting Director, Executive Director of Labour Policy International. Many thanks for your time, sir. Thanks for joining us on
Thank you for having me.
Now, you hold the view that workers' rights have not been respected. Can you explain this further?
Thank you. There's not been due process in all that we've seen with in the banking sector. In fact, in the latest merger of the 5 banks into what we are calling the consolidated bank, there's been, for instance, an order for them to reapply.
Yes.
The workers who are being asked to reapply are pioneers of consolidated bank. Mm-hmm. They began with the bank. Mm-hmm. In fact, they facilitated the seamless transition from the constituent banks. And therefore, it's completely out of place to ask them to reapply for their jobs. Now, you ask for reapplication in situations where, for instance, because of an industrial action, a general strike, appointments have been terminated en masse. And then when there is a settlement, they are to be taken back. Then you ask them to reapply.
But so are you saying that their rights have been disrespected or abused because they were, there when the banks were initiated?
They began with the bank. They made the bank.
Is that enough
possible.
Basis?
It's enough basis. It's enough basis because after the bank has been constituted with them, helping merge the systems to facilitate seamless operation. The workers transited with depositors, customers, etc. The depositors and customers were not asked to sign new mandate forms. Their facilities are continuing as if they were with their former banks.
I see.
Yes.
Now, I know that when these issues come up, usually the blame is put at the doorstep of the leadership of the banks, the directors and management. But can the workers also be absolved or blamed
The way it is now, you can't blame the workers in the state in which they are. For instance, one of the constituent banks in the consolidation is Beige Bank. And we are told that Beige Bank did not qualify to be a bank. Now, if it did not qualify to be a bank, one thought that the appropriate thing to do would have been to withdraw the banking license and let Beige Bank go back where it was previously as a savings and loans company and do what it was doing best. But how do you merge an institution that doesn't qualify to be a bank with other banks?
I see.
It's completely out of order.
As we speak, we know that 700 workers of Beige have been laid off. They've been asking for their severance package. They haven't received it as yet. But what law specific to this situation can they hinge on in order to get their benefits?
Effectively, what the bank has done is to declare them redundant. And this has been done in bad faith because they've not been presented with terms and conditions of service, nor have they been presented with set targets that they are unable to fulfill. But they are being asked to go. Yes.
So what avenues of redress would you point them to?
They need to be better advised. They need to seek appropriate advice.
Earlier, I was asking about the specific law that you know they can reference.
Section 65 of the Labour Act.
Right.
Section 65 of the Labour Act clearly points to the situation in which we are.
And what does Section 65
talks about redundancy.
Right.
It says where an employer contemplates the introduction of major changes in production, program, organization, structure, or technology of an undertaking that are likely to entail terminations of employment of workers in the undertaking, the employer shall provide in writing to the Chief Labour Officer and the trade union concerned, not later than 3 months before the contemplated changes, all relevant information, including reasons for any termination, the number of categories of workers likely to be affected, and the period within which any termination is to be carried out, and consult the trade union concerned on measures to be taken to avert or minimize the termination, as well as measures to mitigate the adverse effects of any terminations on the workers concerned, such as finding alternative employment.
So this is Section
65(1)
of the Constitution
of the Labour Act 2003, Act
2003.
Yes.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, the workers can, stand on this to challenge the management and get their severance packages.
Yes, because this is a new. They are employees. They started with the company, so they have rights. But the bank has not complied with these provisions. And again, it's important that they have, before resorting to seeking redress from outside the organization, it's important that they exhaust internal channels of redress. So from the Chief Executive Officer, the workers can proceed to appeal to a board of directors. A bank has been constituted, consolidated. We know only of the Chief Executive Officer who was named by the Bank of Ghana.
Right.
We don't know if it has a board of directors. We don't know who the chairman of the board is. Does it have this in place? Now, if it does, it's important to make this public.
What we do know is that the workers, many of the unhappy workers, have been, if you like, picketing or appealing to the management of the new bank to pay them their severance packages. But as a policy think tank, I know that a lot of workers are unaware of their rights. I'm sure a lot of workers don't even know this specific law as we speak. Are you going to be championing any legal action on behalf of these workers?
Well, there are many options available to us. We can bring some of these options to the attention of the workers concerned. But I'm hoping that it will not take legal action to deal with some of these issues. Our objective is to promote harmonious industrial relations, and legal action can impair relations. So that is the last resort that will advise them to go. But it's important to call on the management to respect the Labour Act 651 and consult appropriately.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Many thanks for your time. And that is Seth Abloso. He's a labor expert speaking on the rights of workers who've been laid off by the action of the central bank. We have some graphics on the job losses on your screen now. Now, 400 workers of Tema Ryder, they were laid off March 20th, 2017. $700 workers of Beige Bank were laid off in August 2018. 1,000 former employees of the Royal Bank, the Construction Bank, Unibank and Sovereign Bank to be laid off by September. $400 BXC staff laid off July 2018. $30 GN Media staff laid off, and that's in August 2018. 100 estimated staff of EIB laid off. So those were some statistics of our latest figures we've had of job losses in recent months. Now, former executive director of the Media Foundation for West Africa has called on stakeholders in the media sector to set up a fund to support media organizations in distress. He's of the opinion that Ghana's media landscape is overstretched. Listen.
We are seeing was bound to happen in the sense that some of us have always believed that this economy is not in a situation to contain so many media outlets. And I think that because also the NCA did not really, the NCA also just dished out licenses left and right, we have had this avalanche of media outlets which are now facing the dialectic or the dynamic of competition in a small market for media. So the general tendency is that so much growth in a very short period of time within an economy which is not capable of containing such growth in one industry, which is very capital intensive and at the same time labor intensive because they need so many people to employ, and the technology for setting these businesses up are also quite expensive. Advertising grows when economies grow and when industry grows and so on and so forth.
You're watching Joy News Prime with me, Arabo Kumsin. We're taking a break for business, but there's more stories ahead. Don't go away.
Hello again, good evening to you. Welcome to Business. Telecoms giant MTN Ghana failed to sustain the momentum from its initial public offering after listing on the Ghana Stock Exchange on Wednesday. The share price reached 78 pesos per share after it began trading this morning. It, however, reverted to its public offer price of 75 pesos at the end of trading. There's more in the following report.
It is not clear what might have caused the decline. This is because it was the expectation that the huge interest that surrounded the share during the public offer would be replicated during its listing on the stock market. But speaking to Joy Business after listing on Wednesday, Chief Executive of MTN Ghana, Seloma Dadevo, said shareholders should look at what has been done by the company and the prospects that awaits them.
I don't think we have to do much. I think we have to continue to deliver our services in the spirit that we've done historically. First of all, MTN has always been the leader in the marketplace with new innovations like mobile money, with new innovations like trading through mobile money platforms or digitally. our products and services to our customers have always led the way in the industry. As long as we continue to do that, I think people will continue to believe in the spirit of MTN, the success, in the future success of the business. If you look at the trading in the last hour or so, that's also reassuring to see that the value in the first few hours has actually gone up. And we would expect that as we continue to drive the business forward, that this trend continues into the future.
Deputy Managing Director of the Ghana Stock Exchange, Eko Afeji, argued that MTN's listing should help bring about some excitement on the market.
I think it's going to transform the market. It's going to transform the market in many ways. One, the market capitalization is going up by 16%. It's going up from 55 billion to about 65 billion. That's one. It's coming along with the largest number of shareholders, about 128,000. That's the largest we've had for any IPO. So, and the retail investors, and that's why it is quite interesting, form the majority, more than 80-90%. So we're going to see a lot of liquidity in MTN shares.
One of the speakers at the program, the Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Reverend Danologbami Tete, later told Joy Business they would be getting in touch with market players as they move to enforce some of their regulations.
If you are engaged in an activity which can be seen as a capital market activity or securities industry activity, you need a license. So if what you are doing doesn't, what you are doing represents or has all the character of dealing in securities and you are not licensed, then you are in breach of Act 929.
MTN, from its initial public offering to listing, did break a lot of market records. However, it struggled to sustain the record share price appreciation immediately after listing on the local bourse. The telecoms giant raised over 1.1 billion cedis and a record of 128,000 applicants bought into the offer. Well, maybe it might be too early to judge or form an opinion on the share performance of MTN.
Our senior partner at ABN David Fosu-Dorte, has rejected claims that the decision by government to seek infrastructure funding support from China will disrupt the external credit funding program with the IMF. Fosu-Dorte believes the deal must be probed properly to ensure it is used for the intended purpose.
The minority in Parliament has petitioned the International Monetary Fund, IMF, on whether the barter agreement with the Chinese on the Sino Hydro is a loan or otherwise. According to them, the deal is likely to interfere with a program Ghana is currently running with the IMF. Commenting on the issue, senior partner at ABN David Fosu-Dorte, said government should be checked on how the funds are utilized.
But I think the IMF program is monitored on a constant basis. Again, that's one of the reasons why I floor this discussion, because the original $3 billion facility is already factored into the IMF program. So any addition to borrow $3 billion is part within the IMF band already, and at least with the information which is public, that's how I understand it. So it's not an additional borrowing. It is rather how you are utilizing that money. Now, if we go beyond that, again, because you have an IMF program, IMF will come and do the monitoring that they do, the periodic monitoring. So why do we want to speak for the IMF? I find it very difficult to understand why anybody wants to speak for the IMF. Why don't we question the government as to how are you putting the money in productive industries to pay back the money? That's a more productive argument than deciding whether we shouldn't borrow or not. I don't want to speak for the IMF.
He also rejected claims that China is using its financial support to colonize African countries.
But definitely China is not out to colonize anybody. I think in this modern world, no country is going to colonize anybody. The world is a global stage, and in the global geopolitics, each country is trying to assert its influence. And there is clearly an influence assertion being made by China and the U.S.
Speaking at the Ghana Economic Forum in Accra, President of Group Indum, Dr. Papakwesi Indum, called for a decentralized government system to help solve the country's developmental problems.
And then we are asking about sustainability. How can you sustain anything when the micro level, the pocket level economy is not there? And the rural economy is also not there. And there's one thing that you might not expect me to say in a business forum like this, but it has to do with decentralization. Decentralization. That is, letting the people at the local level determine their own priorities, first starting with electing all of their own assembly members and their DCEs. You will be amazed the energy that you will release in this country when that happens, because it would also have to come with some fiscal decentralization as well.
The two-day conference is expected to close with a recommendation from the private sector on ways to better manage the economy.
The Undersecretary of the Ministry of Economy of the United Arab Emirates, Abdullah Saleh, has been speaking about his country's economic relations with Ghana. He spoke with Joy Business's Norvan Hayford.
We are not new in Ghana. We have been invested in Ghana for a long time in several sectors, in mining, in energy, some of logistic projects, agriculture. So I think our trip here today, it's just to upgrade the standard of our cooperation and economic relations with Ghana. Ghana is on top of our priority to strengthen our relation with, especially in Western African countries. The economy of Ghana is promising. The growth of the economy is very positive. It's very open economy and society. It's access for the region, West African countries. I think a lot of things to the legal structure of doing business here. It's very attractive to our investors. The opportunities of business here, the growth of population. There is a lot of demand for several projects and services, and we can provide and we can engage ourselves in cooperation with our partners in Ghana to develop some of these projects.
So what are the really key areas that these investors that you came with from Dubai, what are the areas they are looking to invest in the Ghana?
We are trying to diversify our economic and trade relations with Ghana as much as we can. That's why we invited business people from different sectors, because we believe if we have very diversified economic relations, that is good for the sustainability of this relation, the growth of business and investments between two countries. We have synergies between Ghana and UAE. We have similarities. Ghana is trying to diversify its economy, and similarly is UAE. We diversified our economy from depending on oil and gas to different sectors. Today, oil and gas contribute to our GDP less than 30%. We are the gateway for and hub for trade in the MENA region, and similarly here Ghana is a gateway for West Africa region. Connecting these two hubs together is very important.
And that's all by way of business tonight. Many thanks for watching. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji. Have a good evening.
You're still watching Joy News Prime with me, Araba Kumsa. Now, Delta Forces and Azoka Boys are familiar names of vigilante groups within the political arena. But have you ever heard of the Dragons and Hawks? Well, those are the emerging groups from the opposition NDC, some of whom were spotted at the party's regional elections last weekend. There's more in the following report.
Prior to the 2016 elections, the Azoka Boys remained the well-known internal security group identified with the NDC. This changed shortly after the party's defeat when heavily built men were spotted during the NDC's regional elections held over the weekend. New names such as the Dragons, Lions and Asamankasi NDC forces were seen. Correspondent Precious Semevo recounts the role the Dragons played in the Bono Afo region.
The NDC Dragons were in black T-shirts and positioned advantage areas, including the podium and the 3 polling centers, to deny entry of unauthorized individuals and groups from getting access to the top party officials.
NDC national organizer Kofi Adams, however, says the party is not aware of the existence of these groups.
I don't know of any group like that called Dragon. The party has its internal security. We have not named any group Dragon.
A former Ashanti regional minister, Joseph Yamin, who organized the Hawks during the regional elections, says such groupings are important.
These are people we call task force, and they have a role to play. Delegates play their role, task forces play their role. We will continue to have our task force.
Well, although national organizer Kofi Adams has distanced the party from the activities of these groups, General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Asedun Ketia, is endorsing the groups. Their mission, he says, is to match the likes of Delta Invisible Forces or even the Kandahar boys in the governing MPP, boot for boot. According to him, since the MPP has failed to disband similar groups in their party, it gives them justification to do same. Now, the General Secretary says the emergence of these groups will force relevant institutions to ensure that vigilantism is dealt with.
I endorse it fully as a proper response for the incalcitrance of the ruling government and their refusal to do anything about the vigilantes on the MPP side. You realize that for 2 years now, we have all been complaining about the rising incidence of vigilantism in this country. The president promises that something will be done and nothing gets done. Some of us have been affected by vigilante attack, and yet nobody had been held responsible as we speak to you now. And they are now in charge of the security services, and they still maintain party vigilantes terrorizing people left, right, and center, and all the security services are quiet. Even when you take steps to report, they don't take any action.
Well, security expert Adam Buna is blaming the main security agencies, the National Security and the Bureau of National Investigations, for failing to address the menace of vigilante groups in the country. He believes those two entities must be reformed and made independent, as he reiterated calls for activities of those vigilante groups to be restrained. He spoke earlier on the polls.
Do we actually even need the national security at all at its present state? Probably no. Okay. Do we need a BNI? No. I'm sure they'll be listening to me. They are not happy. But you see, it is the taxpayers' money that is used in paying them. Right. If they are there and we have all these vigilante groups and they don't care, massing up and, you know, doing things that will throw this country into chaos tomorrow, then I would say that, you see, we probably would have to, I have been hearing disband the vigilante groups. Or rather, I will call disband the BNI, disband the national security. Let's reform the national security and make it very independent. Until we make the state agencies independent, where we stop this idea of they parading themselves with the AK-47s and, you know, sidearms and, you know, running after vehicles. People. Yeah, we should have that in place. When we do it that way, we are going to have an efficient Ghana police service and security services. But at the moment, at its present state, we are going to have an upsurge of this type of the hawks, the lions, the vultures, and all these people springing up because they can see a loophole. And so they will take advantage of the loophole.
You're watching Joy News Prime. Now, over 60 shops owned by foreigners at Swami Magazine have been locked up by a national task force weeks after it reopened them for business. The task force had intervened after Ghanaian traders unilaterally shut the shops down in enforcement of the country's trade laws, which bar foreigners from retail trade. Its leader, David Amoateng, will not speak on record, but he revealed almost 90% of foreign shop owners fall short of meeting basic requirements. Nana Asenso-Mensah has more in this report.
The task force is mandated to clamp down on foreign retailers in Ghanaian market to sanitize the retail environment. Currently, the force is moving from shop to shop to inspect resident permits and other documents of foreign traders to ensure compliance with the law. The task force set up by government who are mandated to cleanse the retail market have started their work. Yesterday, the task force started their work here at the Some Magazine Enclave, and they closed down over 60 shops owned by foreigners. And this is one of the shops. Local traders who operate in the enclave are excited by activities of the task force, which have the potential to kick their competitors out of business. Some of them share their sentiments.
For now, I can say it's a very good job that they're doing. I can say their start is perfect. It's a great beginning because they had with them the Ghana Standards Authority, they had with them Food and Drugs Board, they had with them Customs and Immigration Service as well. So all teams were doing their jobs sequentially. They inspected a whole lot of things from them. So I can say that we do appreciate their job. If they would continue like that to finish with the rest of them.
Oh, yeah, but you might say any money and talk.
The foreigners sell substandard goods which are very cheaper than ours, so the customers prefer their cheap product to ours, and this is taking toll on our business. We will be happy if they are completely flushed out of the retail market.
What can I say? I'll afford the for no return into a free system.
Reporting for Joy News, Nana Asensu Mensah.
Now, unemployed graduate nurses and midwife trainees have given government a 3-week ultimatum to employ them or face a massive demonstration at the seat of government, Jubilee House. The group, which demonstrated through some principal streets of Tamale in the northern region on Wednesday, finally converged at the Regional Coordinating Council, where they presented a petition to the Northern Regional Minister, Salifu Said. We'll bring that to you later, but to the Upper West region now, where the graduate nurses and midwife trainees say none of their members is yet to be employed, contrary to claims by government that it employed a total of 27,000 nurses and midwives as captured in the first quarter of the 2018 budget. According to them, a total of 26,864 nurses and midwives have completed their various courses and are due for employment. They were demonstrating in Wa, from where Rafiq Salam reports.
The unemployed nurses and midwives, numbering about 200, majority of whom wore their faded trainee uniforms, went round some principal streets in the Wa Township. They held several placards, some of which read, "Nurses deserve better. The health sector is collapsing, and we are fed up with Nana," and sang and danced one of Sergeant Lee's favorite songs. Convener of the group, Daniel Alitu, expressed worry about government's failure to pay the 6 months allowance of members who are doing national service.
This is the 6th month and no penny, not even 1 cedi, have been paid to our members, over the 8,042 members across the country. No member have received even 1 cedi as we speak. And we think that it's high time the authorities act, because our members are actually frustrated. They've been coming to work, no lorry fare to come to work. Some of them come to work without food. They are hungry, and we all know that a hungry nurse is a potential killer.
The demonstrating nurses finally converge at the forecourt of the Upper West Regional Coordinating Council, where National Secretary of the Ghana Nurses Midwife Trainees Association, in charge of international relations, Said Mohammed Awal, read a petition on their behalf.
It came to us as news of joy when the 2018 first quarter budget was read and 27,000 nurses and midwives were captured to be enrolled permanently. This was further reiterated by the Minister of Information, Honorable Mustafa Hamid, on the 20th of February 2018 on a press conference at the Jubilee House. However, we would like to categorically and emphatically state without equivocation that no nurse has been cleared and employed so far as we are in the last quarter of the year 2018.
He called on President Kofi Adams to, as a matter of agency, to get the nurses and midwives financially cleared and posted, since their numbers keep spiraling.
We are by this petition giving the government an ultimatum of 3 weeks from today, 5th September 2018, to address our plights. Else we would have no option than to walk through the principal streets of Accra, please quiet, to the Jubilee House to register our displeasure to the President in person.
Upper West Regional Minister Alhaji Suleiman Alhassan received a petition on behalf of President Kofi Adams.
You came out in your numbers and you are demonstrating peacefully. So let us continue to do dialoguing. We will make sure we listen to you and address all your concerns. But in respect of what you have given us, I assure you I will personally deliver it to the President.
Reporting for Joy News, Rafiq Salam. Wow.
In the Ashanti region, the frustrated nurses forwarded a petition to the president on the same matter, but this drew the displeasure of Deputy Ashanti Regional Minister Elizabeth Ajimai. Love FM's Nanaya Ojima followed the nurses as they marched through the parts of the Ashanti regional capital.
The Deputy Minister says several meetings between her office to get the group to rescind its decision on today's demonstration had failed to yield dividend. The nurses had marched through Kumasi as part of a nationwide regional action, except for Greater Accra. Here is Deputy Regional Minister Elizabeth Ajaman.
I told you to bring me the petition so that I will go and give it to the Chief of Staff peacefully. Luckily, she was here on Friday, so I took the letter and gave it to her. And she has promised to do whatever she can to support you, to help you. And now again you are on the streets demonstrating. If you give me these letters, where am I taking them to? Because you brought them to me and I've already given them out to the Chief of Staff. Where do you want me to send these ones? Thank you very much. The president is not around. She is the one taking over. And since you have given me these same letters, I have also given them out to her. Where do you want me to take them to? I told you that my minister is not around and I don't want to see people demonstrating while he's away. And I said, why even Kumasi? When you came, you were 4. 3 of you from Accra, Tamale, and so on, 1 from Kumasi. And I said, why? I questioned you, why are you demonstrating in Kumasi? After all, whatever you want will be done in Accra. So why don't you demonstrate in Accra but in Kumasi?
Meanwhile, the nurses are planning what they call a million walk against government if it fails to employ all bonded nurses within 2 weeks. Leaders say they have had to resort to the action after repeated discussion with the government on the issue yielded no positive results. They cite the last meeting with the Ministry of Health, which told them they would have to wait longer because the ministry had already exceeded its budgetary allocation. Daniel Obo is one of them.
And we told her that we wanted to hear from her prior to the due date for the pending demonstration, of which on Monday the minister himself came to promise that on Tuesday, that's the next day, financial clearance will be released to us. Today is Wednesday, and on the whole of yesterday we never heard anything from them, which means the usual promises which they keep giving us and failed is still continuing, of which our members couldn't bear it, and for that matter we had to still resort to street possession, of which for Ghanaians to also know that we are home, we are done with what we're supposed to do as students and as trained nurses, and for that matter the government ought to employ us, but we are still at home and the government is still adhere to that.
So if today's demonstration refuses to yield any results, what is the next line of action? The
next line of action is we left Greater Accra out of the various region demonstration. And for that matter, next 2 weeks from today, if you don't hear anything from the government, we are marching. All the other regions are marching straight away to Greater Accra, of which we will do 1 million walk and end it at the Jubilee House. With that, we wouldn't leave the Jubilee House until what we are demanding is given.
Reporting for Joy News, Nanaya Ojima, Kumasi.
Now, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources is currently considering all concerns raised about the siting of the National Cathedral at the proposed location. There was public uproar after it emerged the homes of appeals court judges at the Ridge area in Accra will be pulled down to make way for the construction of the religious edifice. Speaking to the media on the sidelines of his first working visit to the Lands Commission, the new minister, Kofi Adams, said the ministry will soon make public its decision on the matter. Ernest Menu reports.
The new lands minister started his day familiarizing with the staff and inspected phase 1 of the new regional office. At the client service hall, he interacted with the client service manager, Timothy Anidoho, who revealed the department may not be able to meet the 30 days target for land registration, even though they are working to remove undue interference.
The region, this is where all documents are submitted. And upon completion, this is where the documents are picked. Means we have a collection point, we have an inquiry section there where people can come and ask if they have anything to do with it. And basically, that's what we do here.
I have a question. Are they in a position to comply with the 30 days mandate?
and my answer to him was that current analysis is putting us at close to 7 months for first registration and but for transfers and whole transfers, mortgages, that one we are doing 1 month, 1.5 months since.
At a debate to welcome him, the staff raised issues of low remuneration, transportation challenges, logistical complaints, as well as accommodation as some major challenges they face.
Am I going to go with this less than 3,000 a month? How much will I be paid when I go on retirement?
But the death rate in slum commission now is very alarming. It is now in SMD, it's happening in where? PVRMD, it's happening in land title, it's now in SMD. We don't know where to end next. It's very alarming. We don't have any place to go for our medical checkup. And of course, the salary is not even good, big enough for you to take a taxi or trotro to the hospital.
The acting executive director assured the concerns will be addressed.
Welfare, I think quite a bit of work has been done by the deputy executive secretaries in terms of the conditions of service, provident fund, and a number of things. These have already been done. It's just being finalized so that we can use that one as a basis to improve our conditions a little bit more.
Mr. Asumachem also urged officials of the Lands Commission to put in place systems that will safeguard documents and assets of the Commission in case of a fire outbreak or any disaster.
Now we are moving from this system to digitization, and we are thinking of computerizing all the processes that we do over here. They've even started. But my point was that just now that we have started, if there should be fire outbreak, how do we get these materials stored? And I was told that we have every document in triplicate. Some have been put on computer, others are yet to be put on. So we are praying that we'll be in a position to push it forward. The Commission has assured us, of which we are aware, that there is funding for that particular process, and very soon we'll finish it.
On the controversial issue of the proposed land for the National Cathedral, he says the concerns are being considered. That we understand judges are not excited.
Under consideration. We will soon unfold all issues concerning the cathedral to the general public.
Asumachem also warned against the activities of girl boys and multiple land registration that often results in protracted litigation. Ernest Menu for Joy News.
Meanwhile, President of Amani Ghana, Franklin Kujo, says the steps being taken to build the cathedral should be reconsidered as it is not prudent.
We think that it is not right to spend almost $40 million, is a figure we are hearing, in terms of the land value. But on top of that, we are also hearing that certain expensive properties will be demolished. I mean, worshiping God can be done everywhere. And indeed, if you want to build a cathedral, you don't congest the city any further. We do not think it is right to tell the Ghanaian that the completion of the National Cathedral will complete the missing link in Ghana's architectural landscape. That comment is not particularly in keeping with architecture, our building codes, which ought to be respected by everybody. And I think that this is the sole wish of the president, really. I mean, I think he one day thought he could leave a legacy by building a cathedral. While we do not begrudge him in building a cathedral, the steps being taken to build a cathedral are not prudent, and they should be reconsidered. And I think the president should not be assembling only men of God to be advising him on building a cathedral. You need land economists who are also land valuers, geodetic engineers, building surveyors, quantity surveyors to tell you, for instance, whether it makes economic value sense in order to erect a cathedral in the middle of the city.
Now, many more farmlands are submerged in floodwaters in the Upper East region, with many villages cut off from major towns as Burkinabe authorities continue with the spillage of excess water from the Bagre Dam. At the Boku West district, dozens of farmers have lost their livelihoods, even as Disaster Task Force Operation Thunderbolt begins rescue activities in the area. Access roads in several villages are also flooded, leaving access to healthcare facilities and market centers in jeopardy. Joy News' Upper East correspondent Albert Sori has been monitoring the situation and has this wrap.
It's been 5 days since Burkinabe authorities started spilling excess water from the Bagre Dam in Burkina Faso, and the situation in the Upper East region as far as floods in this part of the country is concerned is that the situation has become very serious now. As at Monday, when we visited Pualugu, for example, most of the farms there were already submerged in flood waters, and it was difficult getting some of the farmers to talk to them. Today, we've monitored the situation there, and it's become more serious now because the farms that we had access to talk to farmers are now completely submerged in water. And so all the farmers have left that area in attempt to stay safe. In other parts of the region, like in the Kasna Nankana municipality, for example, we've had situations where a lot more farms have also been flooded. We've had some of the roads in most parts of the region, in the villages especially, which these roads that are access roads that the community members use to come to the major towns are all covered in flood water. So even as a reporter, you get many calls from people who want you to come and see their situation, but you get there and you cannot find your way to them because the whole place is submerged, and you know, for your own safety, you cannot risk just walking through the water because you don't know where you are likely to end up endangering your life. So it's been a very, very difficult situation.
A president cannot reach market to do whatever they want to do and come. Secondly, there is a lot of teachers who are in the wrong town while they teach in Pole for this community. They cannot come to work. So it's affecting every year around this time. You can't go to your normal duties. So that is how the road is affecting us. Healthcare is the same thing. We can have a sickler. If it rains and the place is flooded, we can carry the person to the War Memorial Hospital.
We've been monitoring the situation in the Boku West district as well. There's a National Disaster Management Task Force by name Operation Thunderbolt, which includes security personnel from the various security agencies. They have been patrolling the Boku West areas, trying to help some of the farmers there. In fact, in that area, many of the farms there as well are completely covered. Even trees, you cannot see the trunk of the tree, just the branches and the leaves.
So now we are appealing to the government to help us, and then NGOs to help us so that we can solve some of our problems. If not, this year it will be a problem to us, because as and now the water has destroyed the whole thing.
So Operation Thunderbolt is a national Disaster Management Task Force, and they have been in the Boko West District in communities like Kobore, Yaregu, and some of the communities near Zebila as well, in attempt to help farmers who may be in a situation where they need help in terms of safety measures to help these farmers. So we've been talking to the captain of Operation Thunderbolt, Captain Yao Kiachi.
To advise their family members, those around them, not to attempt going to harvest. Because currently, even the spillage from the beginning was 514. Yesterday, they increased it to 614, 100 more, which means within 72 hours, you see the water like this, it will go up again. It can cover up to where we are.
Now, a middle-aged woman is feared dead in an accident that happened at the police mobile force at Opebia near the Kotika International Airport. The incident happened when a driver of a private saloon car ran into an eatery in the area. 3 others are said to be in critical condition and currently receiving treatment at the police clinic and the 37 military hospital. My colleague Ernest Meno was at the accident scene and now reports.
He knocked down a hawker, ran the red light and sped off when he noticed the police was on his tail. He bumped into this car and completely destroyed the rear of the vehicle. Eyewitnesses say he then sped off and drove into the police camp, running into a number of issues there.
Patrol sister be ndomi wa ha. Sister bi nso di kosua bre no wa ha. Obeton kosua na ma no. Ti ehun de ye nti na sister no ye ndomi nde wodina. Ba ba yes ba bi isa. Na do di kosua ba ye ne ye ne nsase se wo mra. Ti kwansi na car ni free ho ba ye. Ti free ba na e be bo sister no ye ndomi na kwala ba ko. Kwala mienu. Ba sister no ye ndomi nde wa hu. Ba do di kosua ba ne de wa hu.
Na car na free.
A freelancer's office na neighbor.
And a raha.
Passion, and a raha. Become Nippon.
Tikano na aye a hase.
Passion.
Nampacho, police Nippon or Kakane na or way.
Nippon de me who no.
It's a band so Jacan or Quay and also.
Yeah, who baby Nippon fire. The home baby fire.
I can't know to see I can't the best 5 free and I said.
Patrol say I no more battery free here.
I'm on a battery.
Patrol police for.
Nampacho, a hano a bimotity ha.
If I saw Biano for be ha.
What we are best saying?
Indomie, I watch for no crowd or more be 15 and now for no crowd or more doors of more be 25.
For now, 1 person is feared dead and 3 others in critical condition.
Bana occasion somebody me mama call hospital. Nti me di kan na omo police clinic nti me di kan ko clinic ho no. Nti me kwa na we nya injury kakra bi e wo ni nan e na me nua ne so epra e wo ni nan. Asame ba ha se me be siesia.
I'm Inspector Stephen Labu. Okay. I'm a police officer. I live at the barracks here. To provide security for the driver, we took him to the nearby police station, the mobile force. But the mobile force is an action unit. We don't investigate case there. So all what we can do is to keep him there so that we call the MTTU personnel from airport police station to come for him. So that's what...
What is the briefing you have as to what happened?
Okay, according to the source, the driver knocked somebody down at the Opebia side. That's the information we had later, that he knocked somebody. So while he was running away, he thought there's a way here, there's a way out. So he passed here and unfortunately he ran into...
Ernest Minu reporting for Joy News.
Parliament's Finance Committee has hinted it may expand its probe into the banking collapse and hold a public hearing on the issue. Chairman of the committee, Dr. Makasibe Yeboah, says the 3-day closed-door probe, which began on Wednesday, is just an initial inquiry. Meanwhile, not a single Bank of Ghana official has been punished, despite the regulator's admission that it was partly to blame for the collapse of some indigenous banks. Unemployed graduate nurses and midwives trainees have given government a 3-week ultimatum to employ them or face a massive demonstration at the seat of government, Jubilee House. The group demonstrated through some principal streets of Tamale, Wa and Kumasi. Over 60 shops owned by foreigners at Swami Magazine have been locked up by the National Task Force weeks after it reopened them for business. The task force had intervened after Ghanaian traders unilaterally shut the shops down in enforcement of the country's trade laws which bar foreigners from retail trade. Its leader, David Amoateng, will not speak on record, but he revealed almost 90% of foreign shop owners fall short of meeting basic requirements. Many more farmlands are submerged in flood waters in the Upper East region, with many villages cut off from major towns as Burkina Bay authorities continue with the spillage of excess water from the Bagre Dam. At the Boko West district, dozens of farmers have lost their livelihoods even as Disaster Task Force Operation Thunderbolt begin rescue activities in the area. Access roads in several villages are also flooded, leaving access to healthcare facilities and market centers in jeopardy. Delta Forces and Azoka Boys are familiar names of vigilante groups within the political arena, but ever heard of the Dragons and Hawks? Well, those are the emerging groups from the opposition NDC, some of whom were spotted at the party's regional elections last weekend. NDC General Secretary Johnson Asiedu Nketia endorses the recruitment of the new vigilante groups Hawks and Dragons to match the NPP vigilante groups boot for boot.
And I'm Arba Crimson. From me and the rest of the team, thank you for watching. Good night.
This is Joy News Prime.